Mark Coulton, Joel Fitzgibbon, thanks very much for joining me tonight. Obviously, I'm here in Dubbo, Mark. This is your seat. Unusually, I have to say, for a politician, I got around today and yesterday. You're very well regarded in the area, but there's a lot of consternation about drought policy and whether or not it's really hitting the mark. What's been your feedback as you've been in and around your own seat?
Yeah, look, Peter, this drought's been going on for a long time, as you know. It's in 2015 when we first had the first drought announcement out at Burke, and so obviously this really does impact on people's demeanour, and obviously it's very difficult to hit every mark with the policy. So I understand people are really quite overtaken by the drought, and obviously different farmers and different businesses have different circumstances. So I represent a lot of farmers. I'm certainly not hearing that from all of them, but some of them I think that are doing it a bit tougher are probably looking for assistance.
Joel Fitzgibbon, you have been quite a prominent agriculture shadow minister for Labor. Often the Labor Party doesn't really resonate in regional communities. You've been outspoken on the government's drought package. Some parts you've accepted, some parts you've said they need to improve. I'm hearing a lot of people are frustrated with the offer of loans, both the complexity of the loans, but also the fact that people don't have much liquidity at the moment in any event. What would Labor prefer to see in this package on the drought?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Well, of course, I'm of the bush and represent a significant agricultural region, not as big or as numerous as Mark's, but certainly the Hunter is a significant agricultural region. And of course, I travel the country a lot. I've witnessed firsthand how bad the situation is, and it is very, very hard. Look, my criticism starts with the lack of a scenarios plan, that is, working out what are the contingencies. I mean, is the dry spell going to go on for another year, 2 years, 3 years, and then having an overarching strategic plan in readiness for each of those scenarios. That's what you're doing when you're planning for battle, and we really are facing a war out there. It's very, very bad. So that's the starting point. I think the big missing piece of the jigsaw at the moment otherwise is getting feed to cattle, for example. There's not much point farmers borrowing more money for consumables. I shared with Alan on another occasion the story of the dairy farmer who I asked what a rate relief would mean for him on his land. He said, well, that's about $30,000 a year. And I asked, what would that do for him? He told me it would feed his herd for 9 or 13 days. So it gives you a sort of a feel for what sort of money is needed to keep breeding stock in particular alive. And I think government could be more innovative and creative in ensuring we can do just that.
Peter, on that.
Mark, I know that the National Party, I know there's been lots of debates in the National Party party room on these sorts of issues, and I know the Prime Minister says that some of them are state issues and some of them are federal issues, but what would you say to that?
Sorry, Peter, that did break up.
Yeah, it broke up for me too, Peter.
Just can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Mark, what would you say to the issue? What would you say to the issue of government stepping in and assisting with freight and fodder subsidies?
Well, look, the New South Wales government, part of the drought summit that was at Parliament House last year was the division of responsibilities. The state governments are looking after animal welfare, and I've got to say, I know, I've been a farmer for a lot longer than I've been a member of Parliament, Peter, and a lot of my family and my closest friends are battling this drought, and I know that they're using the fodder subsidy, the freight subsidies, carting, as late as last week, carting hay up from southern New South Wales and Victoria. A lot of the donated hay, the New South Wales government's actually paying all the freight for. So there has been assistance through the state governments for fodder. The reason that we've gone down the loan path with no repayment and low interest, and the payment at the back end of the program, is that farms are so variable. It's not across the boundary fence and across a region, we have different sizes, we have different farm farm mixes, we have livestock producers, we've got pure grain producers, and so the idea of the loans is it puts flexibility and it allows the farmers to take up the level of assistance that's suitable to them. If you just put out a blanket cash relief, it'll hit the market in some places, but in other places, Joel alluded to that with his dairy farmer. These are large businesses these days, and the numbers that they need, the amount of money they need to keep going is quite large, and so that's why it's important that we've got these low interest loans.
Just on that, Mark Coulton, a lot of people don't think that you're hitting the mark. Government, and I know it's New South Wales government here, of course, but government's not hitting the mark in relation to freight and fodder. And they don't want to hear from the Prime Minister or anyone else this line that it belongs to one state jurisdiction or one federal jurisdiction. Is there any more that both layers of government can do together to get through the worst of this drought?
Look, I'm only getting every second word, but I think what I'm saying, is there any more? Look, I talk to a lot of farmers, and I'm across my electorate all the time, and so I've got a pretty fair idea what they want. Some people are taking up these loans. I know the announcement last week for assistance loans for regional farm-related businesses is very popular, but don't forget that there's over 12,700, I think, heading towards 13,000 farmers now on the household allowance, and so that over the 4 years is worth up over $100,000. It's not there to buy fodder, but it's there to allow the dignity of purchasing the essentials of food and basic household essentials. And so that in itself has taken pressure off some families, knowing that those items are covered, and then how they manage their business is another fashion. Those that have looked after the stock, the market's held up quite well, so that it's not like in previous droughts where I've been involved, where the stock become worthless. That's still holding up. Land prices are holding up, so equity's staying in there, and these loans give the ability of farmers to restructure their finance over a different period of time at a lower rate of interest.
All right, well, Joel Fitzgibbon, you've been really critical of the government's plan to take people off the household assistance allowance after 4 years. There was obviously an announcement recently that people will get a cash payment at the end of the 4-year period, but my understanding is they'll still come off the Farm Household Allowance. What's your understanding? Have you been able to move the government on this?
But that's exactly right, Peter, and look, farmers don't want Mark and I to get into a stoush. I know Mark's doing his very best for
no, they don't.
His local constituents, in particular the farmers, but it is true that the government, as we speak, is taking families off the Farm Household Allowance. By Christmas they would have taken 600 off, I think, and another 600 at least soon after that. So that's a real problem. I think it's a very, very bad mistake to be denying farmers that payment while the drought is ongoing. Just on the loans, I've already made the point that more debt, or the reshuffling of debt, is not very helpful to farmers. But the farm loans Mark was talking about, that is the zero interest loans for a while, and the business loans won't be available to farmers or small business until January of next year. In fact, we won't even see the guidelines until then. So the Prime Minister's pretty good at rolling out to the cameras and announcing these things, but they're very slow to come into effect, and sadly, some farmers won't be able to wait until January or later next year. For some of these farmers, the end is coming very, very soon. I was talking to a dairy farmer this week who was just in despair. He said he can't keep going back to the bank, but in any case, he doesn't see these loans, even if they're available now, being of any real assistance to him. And this is a large-scale, efficient, innovative dairy farm, not a small player. And I look at him and I think, well, if you can't do it, mate, who can?
I might just clarify a couple of things, Peter, if I can.
Just Mark, just quickly before we go, what hope do you have that the government will extend the Farm Household Allowance beyond the 4-year period? Because we don't throw people off the dole. Why are we throwing farmers off the allowance?
And we're not doing that either. What we're clarifying is at the end of that, there's a $13,000 cash payment. The legislation's gone through the House so that that can be done on a 6-monthly basis. It's at the same rate as the Farm Household Allowance. So that will be continued. And as the drought continues, if it does continue...
Just, Mark, let me be very clear. Mark, let me be very clear. They're coming off the allowance. They're coming off the allowance. Yes, they might be getting a cash payment, but in technical terms, they're coming off the allowance.
They come off the allowance. When they come off the allowance, they get a payment which is equivalent to 6 months of the allowance. Then after 6 months, there's a possibility, if they still need that assistance, that they can get that payment again. That legislation's gone through, so those people will not be abandoned. They will be able to continue getting the funds at the same rate, but they will not be on Farm Household Allowance. They'll be getting these lump sum payments as they come out. So the farmers that are coming off now are eligible to a 13,000, I think it's 13,600 off the top of my head, allowance, which is equivalent to what 6 months of the payments would be. The farmhouse...
And just be very clear, I've got to go, but you're saying they then can come back. Mark Coulton, you're saying, to be very clear here, you're saying that when they finish the allowance, they come off, they get the lump sum, can they come back on? Yeah. Can they come back on?
Not automatically, Peter.
No, not automatically, but they can apply if they still need it. And as the drought continues to bite, as we've been doing all the way through, we have the ability to adjust and amend policies to fit the needs as they continue to bite.